All right, let's talk about the Colorado Buffs here for a little bit. The Buffs have been in the news a lot this offseason for a lot of reasons that were really unfounded, which we've covered at the time. But the reality is, Colorado has done actually kind of an under the radar good job in terms of upgrading some areas of weakness on their roster, specifically on defense. And one of these new Colorado Buffs is already impressing the coaching staff. Let's get into the report, and then we'll talk about it more on the other side. This is courtesy of 24/7 Sports. BJ Green was one of the top pass rushers during the final season of the Pac 12, ranking third in the conference and 11th nationally with 56 pressures. And now, after transferring from Arizona State to Colorado for his final season of college eligibility, Green is looking to be one of the top pass rushers in the new Big 12. You know what? I didn't know who he was. I hadn't seen any tape on him, and I was just wanting to see him go. New coach Warren Sapp said, "Oh my God, the young man will go inside, outside. He loves close contact. He loves the phone booth, which I love because y'all know who was working the phone booth, right? Superman." All right, interesting comments there at the end from Warren Sapp. But it is important when you focus on the meat of what Sapp says here is that this is a pass rusher that's even better than a lot of people anticipated. Had a great season at Arizona State and has so far proven himself as an elite weapon on defense for the Colorado Buffs. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. But first, Colorado fans, in the comment section below, who's your favorite defensive lineman in Colorado history? There's a couple kind of interesting names. I think some under the radar people that are forgotten about. But give us the one guy you think is your favorite, the best Colorado defensive lineman in team history, and put them in the comment section below. But Miles, what are your thoughts on this report and what it means for Colorado going forward?
Yeah, Nick. At first, I'll try to clarify a little bit of Warren Sapp's comments when he says, he loves close contact. He loves that phone booth. It's like people always say this guy, he could be in a fight in a phone booth. He's so slippery, so elusive, you'd never be able to hit him. So, that close together, this guy really works inside. He's very, very good up close and personal. He just, bull rush, whatever the case may be. He is very elusive and can get through these offensive lines, which is probably why he was one of the best pass rushers in the nation last year. This guy, like they said, top 11 in the country as a pass rusher. He's ranked number 7 per 24/7 Sports as the defensive lineman in the country in a 4-star transfer. So this is a very desirable guy to have. And then Warren Sapp. If Warren Sapp gives you a compliment, I take that, wholeheartedly as Warren Sapp, one of the greatest defensive linemen of all time, coming out and saying, hey, this guy didn't know a whole lot about him, so there's no precedent here. This guy comes out, he watches him play, and he's already getting, he uses the word Superman. So, I mean, that's a pretty big compliment as well. I think Warren Sapp liking BJ Green bodes very, very well for the Colorado Buffs. I think this is part of the narrative where, like you said, there's been so many unfounded and, negative comments about Colorado all offseason. But quietly, under the radar, they've added some absolutely killer additions to this team through the transfer portal, through recruitment as well. And the most important place to add those players is in the trenches. They've had great skill positions this whole time. They've needed help in the trenches. What they do, add a slew of offensive linemen through the transfer portal, get some really great guys through recruitment as well for the offensive line. Then, flip side, what we're talking about right now, adding really great defensive linemen through the transfer portal and recruiting as well. I think Colorado and Coach Prime really, really has a keen eye on what exactly they want. But most importantly, I'm really glad that Warren Sapp, of all people, is impressed with this latest addition.
It's important to understand because everyone looks at Colorado and the way they finished last season. They think, oh, it's a terrible football team, losing record based on, obviously losing record based on their record, right? But the reality is they just had a few areas where if they weren't absolutely god awful atrocious, they'd be a good football team, right? You brought up one of them with the offensive line. This was a terrible team up front. I'm not to bemoan any of those players who played last season. They certainly were giving it their best, right? But the reality is they were not good at all. This was probably the worst Power 5 offensive line that had any sort of notoriety in all of college football. They were absolutely terrible. If they were just okay, they don't have to be good. They don't have to be great. They just have to be okay, mediocre up front on the offensive line. That offense is leaps and bounds better, and they're already pretty good. It's the same thing up front with the defensive line, right? They had a very good secondary, obviously. They had some playmakers at some positions back there. But the reality is they were so bad up front that it really didn't even matter how talented guys like Travis Hunter were or Sanders were in certain situations, right? They just got mauled at times. They didn't have any great pass rushers, no one who could create a sack, fumble, or even get pressure on a quarterback, right? They got absolutely decimated because they were terrible up front. But they don't even have to be good up front, right? Because they have guys like Hunter and Sanders. They just have to be okay. And the addition of one or two key weapons on defense is all you need to go from terrible to okay, because it just completely changes how offenses are going to deal with you. One great pass rusher like Green, suddenly offenses have to double team him, right? Otherwise he goes haywire. What does that mean? It means everybody else up front gets one-on-one matchups. You get enough one-on-one matchups, one guy doesn't have to win every time, right? One guy just wins one play, the next guy wins the next play. Suddenly you can generate a lot of negative plays for opposing offenses, get some pressures, right? Get to 2nd and 12, get to 2nd and 10, get to 3rd and long, right? And then things really start to open up, right? Sometimes it just takes one key playmaker to push a team over the edge. And BJ Green, from what we're seeing and hearing so far, I think he's got a great chance to be that guy up front in the trenches for this Colorado Buffs defense. And if he can be that guy, again, a lot of people are sleeping on this team because we saw how ugly they were up front last season. It's just the reality of it. They're great at skill positions, terrible up front, but they don't have to be great. They don't have to be Alabama. They don't have to be Michigan. If they can just be average college football wise up front, and BJ Green can get them there on defense, made a lot of great moves for the offensive line to help them get them there on offense, then this is not a team winning 4 games or 6 games or 7 or 8 games. This is a team that could win 10 games or maybe even more before it's all said and done. I think the direction the Colorado Buffs are heading in is absolutely outstanding. And this latest report on BJ Green and Warren Sapp is further proof of that.